It's Thursday, June 27th. Digital Trends Live is about to start, and here are some of the topics we will be covering today. Amazon is continuing their efforts to remove any barrier from you being able to get your package by launching Counter. We'll talk about whether it's another strike at retail. Visible is an all-digital, app-based wireless carrier promising unlimited text-to-talk data and more. Their CEO, Miguel Quiroga, will be on to tell us how they're able to do that. And our gaming editor, Felicia Miranda, will join us from New York to talk about Final Fantasy Shadowbringers with some tips and a review ahead of its release tomorrow. And smart home assistants just keep getting more interactive, don't they? Including a new one from Japan's Gatebox that features an anime lady that will text you at work. The future is here. It's exactly how we envisioned it. All that and more here on Digital Trends Live. I think I would want less texts. That would be more what I would be going for.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I really just don't want any more communication.
Right.
Yeah,
Zero.
I want like a home assistant that just blocks people for me.
Yes, just move out into the middle of the woods and then, yeah.
And probably ignores me like a real person.
Right, yeah. You didn't call me today. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're here live every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and all kinds of things while broadcasting live across a number of different platforms. We are on LinkedIn Live, Periscope, YouTube. We're on Facebook, Twitch. We're on the Facebook. Did I say Facebook already? I think I did say Facebook.
We're on all the Facebooks.
We're on all the Facebooks. Wherever you find the Facebooks, we're going to be there as well. Twitch, and we're on Dailymotion, Apple News. We're on 2 different apps, and at digitaltrends.com/live, where we do have our own chat function right there, digitaltrends.com/live, and we have links to all the articles that we talk about so you can easily go to them as we go through the show. But regardless, we appreciate you joining us. Drop in your comments throughout the show. To start off, though, I'm Greg Nibbler, joined by Nicole Rainey. Hello, Nicole.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being in here today.
Thanks for having me.
With your 15 minutes notice that you got. Nicole's
I
here.
work best under pressure.
You do. We just want to throw you under the bus here, make you work for you here. So let's get to talking about some tech news. We have some headlines, some things that are trending right now, and this is coming from Amazon, and I feel like every week we find out a new way that Amazon's trying to get packages to you, whether it's, they're looking towards drone deliveries or all kinds of different things where Amazon goes towards. This is actually just a way to pick up your packages, and it's going to be called Counter, and they've partnered with Rite Aids, of all places, where they're going to be now having places within Rite Aid using Rite Aid employees. We'll talk about that here in a minute, as far as I know, where you can go in and pick up your packages from a Rite Aid. They'll give you a notification. It can be the same thing, like same day, next day, and you walk in and you scan your code and pick up your package.
So this would be an alternative for people getting packages delivered to their house that in cities that maybe don't have the Amazon lockers available.
Correct. Yeah, Amazon lockers, it says from what I looked up, they're available in about 70 cities, but this is, Rite Aid has 1,500 locations, and so this is probably just the start of it. They said they want to partner with other medium to large size businesses, but I think it's interesting without the locker side, that's just a self-pickup thing. If you haven't used the Amazon locker, you get a code, you go there. I hear it's like in Circle K's, Plaid Pantries, things like that, where you can go in and you punch in a code, and your item is in there. It stores there for like a couple of days. You can pick it up. This would be something where you have 2 weeks to pick it up, apparently, but it's with actually somebody behind the counter who goes to get it.
I like this idea because I think a lot of people enjoy the lockers or utilize the lockers more when they're not sure if they can get a package delivered to their place. Either because maybe they live in an area where they've had like package theft or something like that. Or in some cases, like I know people who maybe like live outside of the city, so getting something delivered there can be kind of a hassle sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to get it delivered like to a place that's in City Central rather than having to like go pick it up rather than somebody else having to go all the way out to your house.
That's true. I wonder how that's going to work with the employees of the store. I mean, I'm thinking about it from their standpoint. It's like, hey, here's a new job where you're going to be handing out packages.
Well, is it for sure like a Rite Aid employee, or is it an Amazon employee placed inside the
Amazon
store?
actually said that they're going to be, that their goal, I mean, and this is kind of a side note, but it was just something I was thinking about, that their goal is that it's going to be Rite Aid employees then they're going to make it so it's very easy for them.
Okay.
But still, I don't know how that's going to
So
work
it's a
out.
smart move on Amazon because they're basically just using Rite Aid's infrastructure to then give more packages to more people.
Right, using their storage space, all of that. I mean, it's probably good for Rite Aid as a company, I'm sure. So that you see there where it says like Amazon Hub on a couple of those images, and that's talking about Hub is their kind of overall infrastructure. So they view Hub as Counter being a new part of it, but then you also have Locker, Locker Plus, and Apartment Locker, which so some different aspects that they can actually get that to there as well. So it's just another way Amazon's trying to figure out how to get your packages to you.
You know, you said before, though, that this could be a counter to retail offerings, but I feel like this is a little bit more akin to just like more traditional delivery options like FedEx or UPS.
I suppose so.
Because a lot of them already have options like this where, like just the other day, I got something delivered to UPS, but I had to go pick it up at Walgreens instead.
Yeah. It does kind of feel weird because so many people are getting ordinary items delivered now because you have like Amazon Prime or Prime Now or the grocery side of it. So you'd be going to pick up something from the store that you might actually be able to buy.
That's
at the
interesting.
Store. If you're like going
no, I don't want Rite Aid to see my like 5,000 barrel or 5,000 roll toilet paper order.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like, sorry, I got it from them instead of you.
Yeah. So that's kind of a strange concept, but I guess this also, I mean, I guess for the retail side, the one other angle I was kind of looking at it is this is them being like, all right, well, people are buying from Amazon. I guess we might as well get in on this action somehow, utilize some space, and make some money on it. That's maybe a bigger picture issue.
Yeah.
But for the consumer side, this just makes it more convenient to pick up your Amazon packages wherever you want to pick them up. And they are looking to partner with other businesses as well. So let us know what you think about that. It's kind of one of the big stories today, just Amazon all the time coming up with new ways to get you your packages. I want to know what people think about that. All right, speaking of comments, it is time for Read 'em and Weep. This is where we take a look at some of the comments that come through across our many different platforms, and we answer them directly here on the show, eye to eye. We will tell you what we think about what you posted there. And
we only cry sometimes.
Only sometimes. So that's the thing. That's why you got to watch every day, because you never know which day is going to be the one, where we break down. Somebody just breaks down, and then you'll feel sad about that. But we do read the comments here at Digital Trends, so we do enjoy them. Christopher, we're going to talk about this here in a minute regarding a Google Maps detour trapped 100 drivers on a muddy one-lane road, celebrating the 28th anniversary of Lemmings. We're going to cover this here in a minute, some Google Maps issues. I'll say over this last weekend, I also had some Google Maps issues where it was wrong. So I'm starting to see some holes in the magic of what it is, but this story in particular is hilarious.
So are we talking about the game? Is it the Lemmings the game? Is that what he's referencing?
I don't know what I didn't know. I was going to hope that Lemmings the game. Yes,
okay.
Lemmings the game, for sure.
Okay, because it was the people, the little like people going down the dirt road sometimes. It was like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm trying to think. There was another one that was really popular.
Lemmings that run over the cliffs, but I wasn't really sure.
Yeah, right? That's the game.
That's the game?
Wow, okay. So I have something, I have a Google wormhole.
See what you've done, Christopher? This is all your fault.
Read them and inspire not doing work later, because I'm going to be Googling Lemmings.
One comment, we're off the rails. Gamerica, regarding TCL 75-inch 6 Series 4K HDR TV review. Seldom seen such a BS review. Who cares what the patterns look like? We can't see it. Just tell what you think of it, what the price of the beast is, and if it's worth the money.
The beast.
The beast.
I mean, this thing is a beast. 75 inches.
Yeah, that's big.
Pretty crazy.
That's a pretty big television. I do like, that it's just, we don't want your review. Tell us what you think of it.
Like, that does seem kind of counter.
It's kind of
like you're telling us two different things. Like, don't tell me what it looks like. Just tell me how much it costs.
Yes, and then tell me what you think of it and what the price of the beast. I do like that, though. That of anything out of this comment, that's what we need to take. I think that's how Caleb should address everything.
Just this beast.
Yeah, look at this beast here. Look at the patterns on this beast.
And it's like three things now. You just got to hit it. Don't talk about the patterns anymore. Just the price.
Right.
And everything you think about it.
Yes.
But nothing about the patterns.
No, nothing about the patterns, nothing actual, just talking about the beast. Alias Aslan, regarding NASA was hacked by a Raspberry Pi computer. This must be some sort of an ad for the Raspberry Pi. It is true. I don't know all of the details on that. I know that clearly we have it at digitaltrends.com, but somebody was able to use a Raspberry Pi and hack into NASA and take some data.
So his theory is that somebody within the company did it just to promote it more.
just to do it. So
I mean, I'm already sold. Those little devices are so cool.
They are pretty cool.
Yeah, I got one for my brother for the holidays.
Really?
Yeah.
What's he done with it?
Not as much as I was hoping
Hack
so
into
far.
NASA?
Maybe this was him. I should follow up. just in
Oops,
case.
sorry. Spoilers. Erase that one. All right, Alias, thank you very much for your comment here on Digital Trends Live as we go through Read 'em and Weep. Gage, there's a lot to unravel
Gage
right
the
there.
Golden Maniac,
Gage-
Straight Jacket 525.
What's your online handle? Gage the Golden Maniac, Straight Jacket 525. You know, no big deal. Regarding San Francisco as the first city in the U.S. to ban the sale of e-cigarettes. So they ban vapes but keep cigarettes. I smell big tobacco lobbying to keep their products from having competition. Just another reason to steer clear of that. Hole.
So does he hate San Francisco or does he hate the fact that e-cigs have been banned?
I think regardless, he hates San Francisco. So I think that was there was a vehicle, no matter what it was a vehicle to get to that. I'm going to guess Gage the Golden Mechanic. Wait, Gage the Golden
Maniac.
The Golden Maniac, Straight Jacket 525. sorry, Gage. Doesn't care that much about big tobacco. I'm not going to guess.
Yeah,
his stance.
I don't know about that. I'm not upset about the ban.
Yeah. Well,
until e-cigarettes get more regulated, I think.
right. I think what they were doing was they said there needed to be some more studies on them.
Yeah,
whether or
and
not
too,
were
safe. they market to younger
Yes.
demographics. So.
Yep. Well, Gage the Golden Maniac, Straight Jacket 525.
Gage the Golden Mechanic.
Says that there's the Golden Mechanic. I like Golden Mechanic better. Yeah.
Change your name.
Yep. All right.
And don't go to San Francisco.
Definitely don't go to San Francisco. Jake, regarding influencers are bending the rules around guns. What's an influencer? For centuries, they've been called models. Millennials have to rename everything. Suddenly, skipping breakfast is now called intermittent fasting. WTF.
I read it. I'm not going to argue with that. That's actually pretty awesome.
Going from model to influencer?
Yeah, it's like, no, I didn't just have time for breakfast this morning. It's intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting is pretty good. I like that as well. We've learned a lot here from this.
We did, yeah, definitely.
So,
don't go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Me not having time to eat breakfast is a new diet.
TVs are beasts.
TVs are beasts.
Check out this beast behind us here. All right, it's definitely going to be worked in.
Oh,
Thank
and my
you.
brother hacked NASA.
Oh, and your brother hacked NASA. So yeah, we're 15 minutes into the show, less than that, and this is what's happened. Thank you, everybody, for sending in your comments. We have more news, though. So let's continue on from Read 'em and Weep. A couple of stories from Google. We're going to hit that one about Google Maps here in a second, but this is another patent that has been revealed, and there's an online site called Let's Go Digital that digs through and finds patents and then kind of exposes what they've found. And this is a patent that Google has put in for a foldable phone, but it's kind of a unique way, a unique version.
I'm really intrigued by this because
Yeah.
I just can't my tiny brain cannot fathom why I would want this.
Right, and I said,
But I want it to exist for some reason.
yeah, I do too. I want to see what it would do, why you would need this. But so it's smart book is the proper way to describe this. So all of those would be screens, and so each one is a screen. You would fold through it like a book. They said going through reading it, they said for the patent it looks like it's a lot thicker than it probably would end up being in theory. The mechanics of it would actually be stored in the binder. And so that's where the processors and everything would be stored, and then you would flip through it like a book, but each one being a screen. What do you think of this? For everybody watching live right now, drop in your comments. Like, what do you think about that? Can you imagine a use for that you would want, or is this something that's just, just another thing down this folding screen line that we still haven't really?
I guess for me, a lot of times we're seeing something that opens up like this, right? So it's like you're seeing like one screen, but you're saving real estate by being able to fold it over. I can't imagine like flipping through something like this. Like, what's the wasted space on the other side? Like, why do I need to see? Like, why am I going to have a screen that I'm not actually looking at that point? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just wasted real estate. Sam in the chat right now, Sam Slaughter, nice. That's a nice name. Just said their smart book folds now like a real book. It's true. Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta see it more and more like a real book. I don't know exactly. That's the thing. Like, what would you use this for?
I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
I really can't think of anything. So I'm interested to see if any of y'all have any thoughts
I can't think of anything, but like you said, I still want to see it.
I still want to see it, yeah.
I want to see it in action.
But we don't know if we're going to see it because this patent was filed last year, so
Yeah.
they still have to like actually develop this. Like there's no word
Right.
from Google whether or not they're actually pursuing this. Like maybe they'll come out with some other different folding device.
True. Yeah, I mean, and that is true. Like a lot of these companies will put in patents for all kinds of things just to make sure that they have it on there. But that means still at some point somebody thought of this and has a use in mind of what this could be used for, whether or not it ever gets made. And I want to know what that use is. So if you work at Google, please tell us. Let's see. I'm seeing if it works like a book. It's also likely better for memory retention. Maybe that's something along the lines. because
Interesting.
You're folding through it. I don't know. I don't know where it would go, but I still like it.
Except if there's maybe some like gaming potential here, like having some sort of like interactive thing where you're just, like,
yeah.
switching to the different screens.
We have to switch back and forth.
Yeah.
It seems annoying, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. All right. Well, Google, clearly get a hold of Nicole and I. We'll work this out for you. We'll get this figured out, what you're going to have there. Taking a look on YouTube. And we're on YouTube as well for Digital Trends, NMTW6. What in the world is going on here? Well, welcome to Digital Trends Live. It's our daily show here from Digital
Is he talking
Trends.
about us or the Google book?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one, but either way, thanks for joining us. All right, continuing on with the news. This is one I do want to get to, and it has to do with Google Maps and an issue that happened with that. And it was a detour. This was in Denver for people, I believe, going to the Denver airport. And what happened is there was a traffic jam, and as you know, if you use Google Maps, it'll try to route you around that. Get you around. And there was one woman who said it said the trip was going to be, instead of a 20 minutes, a 40-minute trip, so she took the detours. Well, this is the problem that comes down to this, is Google Maps doesn't know that it's been raining, that the road that they're taking them down is a dirt road.
A one-lane
dirt road that has now turned into a mud pit. And this is an actual picture from this pileup, over 100 cars piled up on this one-lane dirt road, all probably really happy trying to get to the airport. And there's a picture, the picture of the confused people with their hands on their heads and like, oh man, what do we do now? All because they followed the Google Maps.
So the driver that took that photo, they were telling Denver 7, like one of the local outlets. My thought was, well, there are all these other cars in front of me, so it must be okay. Which I feel like sums up the entire situation. Like even though Google Maps incorrectly rerouted these people, we've all done this.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you're just following people and it's just like, is this the right way? Like you're trying to avoid like a traffic thing, you just start following people.
Yep.
And so Google technology combined with our general like hive mentality led to just...
I mean, that is it. All of us are guilty of doing that, I would imagine, if you use any kind of, mapping service, because that's happened to me just getting around, the freeway. I'm like, God, that doesn't look like the right road, but all right, 2 other cars went down. Sure. I'm going to go down.
But so this was that happened to you this weekend?
This happened to me over the last weekend I went to the coast, and I went up in the Washington side of the coast. But anyway, Google Maps had wrong businesses on there, and the businesses weren't in the right locations. And so I was following that, and then I'd end up in a completely different spot. So I had some frustration with Google Maps myself.
I don't even know if I can be completely mad at Google Maps or like any of these map services, because like mapping the entire world is a huge undertaking, right? And we used to be way less reliant on this sort of like in the moment sort of navigation.
Right.
Like you used to have to like look up where you were going and how to get there, and like write down the instructions.
Yep.
And then you would be prepared,
or
you'd be prepared to be able to handle like any sort of detours that you had. And then now it's just like, we barely ever look up like where we're going.
Right. I mean, those people could just be stranded there still because like, well, it hasn't updated yet. I don't know where I'm
Nobody
going.
else knows how to get there.
Yeah. It is pretty crazy just how much we rely on it already. And and like I said, I was guilty of it over this weekend. I could have looked up the address and just actually figured it out. It was like, oh no, Google Maps takes me there. Nope, didn't take me there. But at least I didn't get stuck on a road. I would be the first one to be so mad if I were on that road. But since I wasn't, I think it's hilarious. It's funny. So 100 people, they did all get out. They survived. But yeah, 100 people stuck on a dirt road because Google Maps took them down that. Those pictures are hilarious. All right, continuing on. We have one more thing here. This is actually, today, this was the trending story on Google News. And it's something that you wouldn't necessarily expect. It has to do with a RoboBee, a flying drone that is this much closer to being completely self-contained using solar-powered energy. That's a lot that I just said right there. So it is, but that is what it is. It's a solar-powered winged robot, and this is something that has been being worked on for a while. And the goal is to have, a flying drone robot that can be powered by itself. Right now, it still has to be tethered for a lot of times because that's the only way that you can get enough power in there.
A tiny drone that can be powered by itself that is also super, super tiny.
Yes, super tiny,
very
tiny. And this is something that a lot of different people have been trying to work on this. A lot of different companies have been trying to figure out how to do it. This particular one, the RoboBee X-Wing is what they're calling it. And there he's taking a look at it right there. It has 4 wings that flap 170 times per second.
Wow.
That's a lot. And there's a demonstration of it as it's flying in the lab, and that's showcasing some of the solar panels that they're using to, in theory, that they could end up powering this thing completely by itself.
That's really awesome. So it's
Yeah.
researchers at Harvard that are conducting this, and apparently they've been working on it for a while. This is just the latest version. Right?
Yes, correct. This is the latest version of it. So it's the solar panels themselves. There's 6 different panels on there, and it's controlled by, let's see, 2 muscle-like plates that contract when voltage passes through them. So then the 6 solar panels weigh 10 milligrams each. So they're trying to get it as light as possible, and that's one of the big issues is you can't put a battery on there, a normal battery, because it's just going to weigh it down. If you want to, make something the most disturbing thing possible, like a RoboBee, you have to have it really light.
So what would you imagine this is used for?
Well, I mean, I watch Black Mirror, so I know what it would be used for. There's an
Nefarious
episode,
things. Very nefarious things.
Oh, yeah. There's an episode specifically that covers this. But what they're saying is just using it for things where you have navigation issues, where you want to get something in there that a person can't, or a heavier robot wouldn't be able to, or a heavier drone, something small. They always come back to talking about for rescue situations, if there's in need of some kind of disaster, or there's rubble and you need something to fly in between that rubble. Although then it wouldn't have the solar power, so I don't know how that would work. But that's usually what they talk about with some of those aspects. Yeah, 1 centimeter. I mean, that is just insane that is that small.
I like the fact that, I mean, this seems kind of like a weird, arbitrary statement, but I like the fact that they're looking to nature to figure out the design of this.
It is true, yeah, looking to nature, and that's something that you see as a theme for a lot of robotics now, especially when it comes to soft robotics, which is a whole different issue, where they look at different ways that, like geckos, the way that they can, run up walls, or they'll look at an octopus and see how it can move and how it shapes itself. So they are definitely looking to nature to see how they can actually shape some of these robots. But this one, man, a RoboBee. I mean, if you think about an army of these, what are they going to do with them?
Yeah, so I was about to say, I know that you automatically go towards like the eventual robot takeover.
Yes.
But I also know that you're disturbed by the way that certain robots move because they're not very natural looking. So, does the RoboBee, does it make you more comfortable because it flies like an insect, or less comfortable because you're already imagining an army of them?
I guess I just have to get used to it and now feel that, I should adapt the army. So that should be what it is. So, or adopt it. Yeah, so I guess I'll just have to be on board with it.
Greg and his RoboBees.
I'm fine with my fleet of RoboBees. Yeah, so that's what they're talking about, though. And this is, again, so the RoboBee flying drone, and finding out ways that we can power tiny drones and robots using solar power. And I think, if nothing else, the idea that they can get that amount of power out of solar cells that small, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's
really cool.
Yeah,
because then that could be adapted for other things. If you can imagine putting just one single solar panel on the top of your house to be able to power the entire thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, extrapolate that out to bigger ones or more small ones. I mean, there's a lot that you would be able to do with that. So it's an interesting concept, and Harvard is doing that study. There's other companies and institutions working on studies as well, but that's what we have for you there. All right, we've got a lot coming up on Digital Trends Live today, as we always do. Felicia Miranda is going to join us from New York here in just a little bit to talk about Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. So we'll be discussing that. But coming up next, you've probably seen this in the news, especially today. I'm talking about a phone service from Visible that is an all-digital and app-based wireless carrier. Pretty unique concept and some pretty good deals that they have going. So we're going to be talking to the CEO, Miguel Quiroga, who's going to be joining us here to talk about their platform, how they're able to do it, and some of the unique things about Visible. Before that, though, Nicole, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for for having me.
Always nice to have Nicole in here. And thank you, everyone who's watching, for joining us. Drop in your comments, your questions, whatever you want to bring up. We will absolutely cover it. We've proved that. And we'll continue on with more Digital Trends Live right after this. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We're live here every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, talking about tech headlines, news, and having discussions around technology that affects your life. I'm Greg Nibbler, and certainly mobile technology is something that affects our lives more and more. We're constantly on our phones, and we see the mobile devices advancing, but what about the phone services themselves? Well, there's some new ways that it is being utilized with mobile technology in association with that. I'm talking about going all digital. And what does that mean? Well, we're going to be discussing that right now. Joining us, we have the CEO of Visible, Miguel Quiroga. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good. I'm glad to be on.
So Visible, I want to get into this and talk about your platform. I've just been reading about it today. It's actually seems like a lot of people are discussing it. And for everybody who's watching live, can we get maybe just a little bit of your background and then get into what Visible is itself?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So Visible, for myself, first of all, yes, I come from the background of the telecommunications industry, and we spent a lot of time in the industry thinking about customer experience. And it's a long-term challenge. The wireless industry in particular is, several decades old, and it's been a very traditional model. What we have been thinking about as Visible, the genesis of Visible, is why can't we get the experience of wireless service, something that is so crucial in modern life, to be simple, easy to use, get the basics right. Do I have to stand in a store? Do I have to wait, on the phone? Does my bill have to change every single month? And so that's why we created Visible. Visible is the first all digital carrier in the United States. It's on Verizon's 4G LTE network, and it offers pretty much unlimited everything: voice, talk, text, and mobile hotspot. And we were built from the ground up with the premise that wireless service experience can be simple and easy to use. So our entire technology stack is built with that in mind. It's a cloud-based model that allows us to essentially do things in a nimble and easy to use way for our customers. Just recently, just yesterday, we announced that we're actually removing also our speed cap, which is offered to both to our new and existing customers, which is a pretty exciting offering. That we're really getting great resonance from both new and existing members today.
Yeah, it's definitely getting a lot of trending news on that, and I want to get into that as well about how you're able to maybe talking about speed caps in general. But before we do that, I want to dig into this just a little bit more to really make sure we all understand. So all digital and app based. So specifically, how does that work? Like if I go up and I sign up for a Visible phone service, what am I getting with that?
Absolutely. So think of it a little bit of like phone service in a box. It's kind of the simple way to think about it. You go online, you go to visible.com, you basically can do one of two things. You can bring your own device, which broadly we're compatible with all iPhone devices. There is a range of Android devices that are continually growing. So for example, you can get purchase a Pixel, Samsung S9, S9 Plus, or a Visible R2 device, and essentially buy a device which has financing, $0 down, 0% financing, as well as device protection, or you could bring your own device. And those two options for customers, you can go online, We'll ship it to you next day shipping, and then essentially you'll be able to connect to our network and you're good to go. So the whole premise is to be able to manage your service experience from the comfort of your home, from the comfort of you on the go, without having to go into stores. We don't have stores, and that is kind of the premise of our business model. And we are there to provide support as needed to our customers all the time.
I like that idea of it. I mean, it seems like it's almost a no-brainer that should have happened already, but that's great, that it's actually happening, an all-digital phone service. Talking about this, going forward, you said that you'll hook up to the network. What's the backing of your network, and so how are you connecting?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our network is built, essentially, it's riding on Verizon's 4G LTE network. So effectively, what you're doing is we use Verizon's 4G and LTE network. We provide a visible experience to connect to that network, and so you get the best of that, network, which is, as we know, the best in the U.S., as well as the offering and the experience that Visible provides. So the two things married together, we think, are a really compelling offering, and perhaps one of the most compelling offers in the industry, because not only do we offer this simple, easy to use experience, the whole offering is $40 all in, no taxes and fees, no activation fees, either for the line or for the device, and basically what you see is what you get. So that premise of simplicity rings true to everything we do in terms of the customer service experience and the offering.
I mean, that seems so straightforward, but instantly I think, because we're all trained, with over phone services over the years, in particular years ago, it's like, oh, there's going to be hidden fees, there's going to be something else added in, there's something else going on. But I mean, if it's $40, like how are you able to offer that? And maybe what are some of the obstacles you had to overcome? Because in particular, I want to get into the speed cap, which, we're all used to that, where there's a certain level where there's a speed cap, but that's actually gone as well. Can you talk about, how you're able to do that?
Yeah, our whole business model is designed with that premise of simplicity. And it sounds easier, like, hey, just make it simple. The truth is, making it simple is actually really hard.
Right.
Simple itself is innovative, right? And getting that to work crisply and cleanly for customers, it's not obvious to get it done. The way we do that is, because we have the facilities-based carrier economics, we're able to provide the type of offering directly to the consumer. We take out all the extra overhead that comes with delivering these traditional services in the traditional business model. We're passing that value directly to the consumer, and therefore, because our offering is simple, we can keep that consistency directly to the customer, and then that's why we can provide such a compelling offering. So that's really why the model is what it is, and that's why we're so excited about and confident about where we are today.
Wow, I mean, it's pretty cool where you're going right now. I mean, where do you see this happening, because you're all digital, all app-based? Where do you see the phone industry going in, say, the next 5 years? Just you've had so much experience in it. I'm really curious to get your thoughts on that, where you think this is heading.
Yeah, no, I think the wireless industry is one that is so critical, but you also take it for granted, and also the baseline, just like you said, what do you expect in the industry? So if you were to rank stack what your consumer expectation would be across every category, the telecom category broadly would be at the bottom of the barrel. And the only category that would be worse would basically be your experience with the federal government. So basically, paying your taxes or going to the DMV is worse. And the only thing that's worse than potentially dealing with your wireless service provider. And so in many ways, we think that experience is the differentiation point for the category. We're leaning into that early on and heavily because we built our technology stack with that in mind. Our orientation is to be able to respond more quickly to consumers. The removal of the speed cap was a direct response to consumer feedback. There's different perception about what speed cap means. And, we felt that, look, we could debate it, or we could just actually, test and learn with our customers to see what really the experience they need is. And we can actually essentially offer that because of the way we built the company from the ground up.
And I love the idea that you can bring in, you said about any iPhone and a number of different Androids that you can bring into the service. So just from that experience, like how that would work from a customer experience. So say I've got, an Samsung Galaxy S8 or something, and that's on your list. How would that work with signing up with Visible if I'm not going into a physical store?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So today we're, like I said, we're compatible with the broad spectrum of iPhones, and then also the Pixel 3 XL, Samsung S9, S9 Plus, and the Visible R2. Coming up soon in the next couple of days will be the Moto G7 and the Pixel 3a and XL. What we're excited about, though, is those are the particular devices we have today. We're continuously adding more Android devices in the catalog. You go online, you basically check to see your device compatibility by looking up your device. We'll tell you if that in fact is compatible. In the event that you have a device that's not compatible, but you'd still like to try us out, we also have a swap program which allows you to send the device in, and we will ship you back a device that is connected to our network, and you're able to go and get online as well with our network.
Wow. Well, it's pretty innovative. It's really cool that you've got this out there. And for anybody who does want to sign up, so it's just you go to visible.com or visible. I'm sorry. Can you direct me to the right website?
Yeah, of course. No, it's visible.com.
Okay.
That's absolutely.
It's such a good URL. I wanted to make sure that I had it right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Visible.com. You could go to the either the App Store, Android or iOS, and essentially download the app as well and sign up through that process. So either works. And then you're good to go. You basically go through the process, and we'll help you get it connected.
Very cool. Miguel, thank you so much for joining us here today, too, to talk about this really cool platform. I like that there's some changes, some pushes to the telecommunications industry and changing for that customer experience, keeping that in mind. And it sounds like you're right on the right track with that. Miguel, thanks for joining us here on Digital Trends Live.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So that is really cool. Visible, so visible.com. I will be taking a look at that myself because I think that's what we all want, right? We want unlimited everything. That's kind of what we come to expect. But he did have a point there just talking about how sometimes, maybe we need to think about the technology and what it takes to actually get that and managing expectations a little bit. But still very cool. And lots to talk about here on Digital Trends Live coming up on the show today. So what we're going to be doing is taking a break. I'm here in Portland, Oregon, but we have our studio in New York as well. And Felicia Miranda is going to be joining us to talk about Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. If you have questions, it launches tomorrow. I believe it's out publicly tomorrow. If you have questions for her about that, get them in here, and then I will ask I'll ask her those questions that you have about Final Fantasy. All right, we've got lots coming up. Stick around. Back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. This is Digital Trends Live, and you're watching it, and thank you for doing that. Drop us a comment, whatever you want to do throughout the show. We're on a number of different platforms: LinkedIn Live, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, Dailymotion, Apple News, 2 different apps, and digitaltrends.com/live, which I want to emphasize that because at digitaltrends.com/live, as we go through the show, we'll have links to everything that we're talking about that are posted in there as well. So it's another great place, but no matter where you are, thanks for finding us. And something that it is time to talk about here on Digital Trends right now is our video game section, and in particular, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. It's coming out tomorrow. Joining us right now from New York, we have Felicia Miranda. Hello, Felicia.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Doing well, and want to talk to you about this. I want to go through some of the specifics of what's happening with it, but maybe just to bring everybody up to speed, can you give us the definition or give us the basis of what this version is about and when it's coming out, and kind of walk us through the basics?
Yeah, definitely. So Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers is an upcoming expansion. It's the third expansion to the game. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Final Fantasy XIV is Square Enix's MMORPG. So it takes place in, the world of Final Fantasy, and you can create your own character, and you can level up that character, and there's a bunch of things to do that are, RPG related. You can pick a class, you can level up that class. There's various jobs and things like that. So yeah, Shadowbringers, I almost said Stormblood, that's the other expansion. That's coming out, and if you want early access to it, you can get in tomorrow, but that requires you to pre-order. So we'll go over a little bit of what Shadowbringers is going to have. It's going to have a ton of new content, so yeah.
So, and it seems like there's,
into it.
I mean, going back to the Final Fantasy world just in general, I mean, what particularly about this one is going to stand out and be so much different compared to some of the other expansions?
Ooh, so this one is very different. The story, for one, although we don't really know too much about it, Square has alluded that instead of, well, in a lot of Final Fantasy games, you're on the side of light, which is like, good and pure and all that fun stuff. So in this expansion, it's going to take a different turn, and you're going to be a warrior of the darkness. So in one of their promotions, they were saying you're going to go from a hero of light to, a villain of darkness. So you're going to be kind of playing on the opposite side, it seems, in this expansion, which seems very exciting, I would say.
Which would be pretty fun. I kind of like that idea.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So in Final Fantasy 14 Shadowbringers, there's going to be a ton of new content. They're raising the level cap to 80. I think right now it's 70. So people who have reached the level cap and have been itching to, level up some more, you're going to get that. There's going to be new races. So there's this new one that I'm pretty excited to try out, and it's called the Viera. I think I'm saying that right. And it kind of looks like a rabbit. They have like, ears like a rabbit. And then there's the Rothgar, which are like, they look like lions, like lion warriors. So that's very exciting. We're also going to see new jobs. So one of those jobs will be the Gunbreaker, which I think is really exciting because he wields a gun blade, which if you're familiar with Final Fantasy VIII and Squall, he wielded a gun blade and is a really popular weapon. So that's going to be really cool.
So so you have that different weapon, a gun blade, coming into it. You mentioned so. See, I'm looking here just at some of the things that you have in your article too at digitaltrends.com. So there's some new, you have new classes. You have, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot to this. Number one.
Oh yeah.
But you mentioned that it goes up to, I think it was level 80. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yes.
About some of the different levels.
Sure. So it's going to raise up to level 80. So you can definitely level up one of your current classes, which is probably going to be the case for a lot of people. But there's also going to be new ones, new jobs. Well, they call them jobs. And these new jobs are going to be dancer. So there's a dancing class, and basically it's kind of like a ranged DPS. So similar to healers or magic casting classes. And it's kind of funny because there's been a meme going around where it's like someone just dancing in the corner while all this chaos is going on. And all they can do is just keep dancing because it's like they use it to attack, they use it to buff. It's pretty hilarious. And then there's also going to be, well, then the Gunbreaker. That's the other one. Those you can start, I think, at level 60.
Nice.
And then you can level it up to the level 80. There's also going to be new locations. So there's going to be 2 big cities being added. There's the Crystarium, and then there's this place called Yulmore. I think I'm saying this right. Sorry if I'm not. But apparently it's been hinted that this might be Limsa Lominsa before, like the first version of it. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Limsa Lominsa is one of the current cities in Final Fantasy XIV, one of the major cities. So that's very exciting.
It sounds like they're really tying in a
Just-
lot of the other games into this.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's kind of taking it back almost. Like it feels as if we're going to see a little bit more of the story before, unravel some of the story of what happened before what we've seen. So I think that's going to be very fun for players who have been, really, diving in and really into the lore, because it's a very heavy, it's a game with a lot of heavy lore. You kind of miss it if you're really one of those people who just likes to grind it out and get really cool armor and things like that. But there's a ton of there's books that you can read, and there's a ton of information online if you want to get all caught up on the lore. You don't even have to play the game. You can read the lore, and that on its own is pretty fascinating. And of course, there's going to be dungeons. I think one of the really cool things in this one is that there's going to be a 24-man alliance raid. So there's going to be 24 players in one raid. That's going to be nuts and pretty cool, I think. And it was co-created by the guy who made Nier Automata, which is another game from Square Enix. So that's pretty cool.
All right, I'm ready to play this game.
And yeah. 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 If you are a beginner, if you want to jump into it, Final Fantasy XIV does have a trial, so you could try the free trial. They took off the 2-week limitation on it. I'm not sure how long the trial lasts for, but you can jump in for free and try it out. We also have a beginner's guide, so if you're interested in really jumping in and you're a little confused as to where to start, because MMOs can be really intimidating, make sure to check out our beginner's guide. And if you're a little bit behind on leveling, we also have a leveling guide, so make sure you check that out as well.
Nice. So that is all set up for people like me, the beginner's guide. So, perfect. Well, for anybody who wants to get this, you mentioned that if you pre-buy, you can get it tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. So if you pre-order the game, you can get access to the game tomorrow ahead of everyone else, ahead of its launch on July 2nd, which is next Tuesday, I believe. And you also get pre-bonus items, one of which is like an Aetheryte earring, which will give you more experience, and then a minion, a gremlin minion, I think, which is one of those cool little guys that will follow you everywhere, and it's adorable. So yeah, you can get early access starting tomorrow. We'll also have a review for it, so if you're not interested in pre-ordering, totally cool. We'll have a review in progress ready by launch day, and then the full review shortly after that.
Perfect. Well, Felicia, thank you so much for being here on Digital Trends Live. And again, all those articles that you talked about, they're at Digital Trends for people to go check it out. And excited to see what the review comes out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Greg.
All right, so there we go. Felicia Miranda, that's our video game editor. Really cool. That was a ton of information. That was awesome. So finding out about Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, you can pre-buy now and get access to it tomorrow. All right, we have more coming up. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to take a break. We've got Pat Kennedy from OSIsoft, the founder and CEO, is going to be joining us, talking about the Internet of Things and how expansive it's becoming and what that's going to mean for us. What are we doing with all that data that we're gathering? Well, we're going to find out a lot about that coming up in our next segment, so drop in any comments or questions that you have in the chat wherever you are finding us. We'll be back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. We're live here every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific and noon Eastern, bringing you all kinds of tech headlines, news, and interviews and discussions around technology, especially the kind that affects your life. And I think when it comes to smart homes and the Internet of Things, we've adapted it so quickly, where we have so many different devices out there, and it's expected there's going to be hundreds of millions, if not billions, more devices that are going to be out there in the world in the next coming years. But with all that data, what's going on with it? How is it actually going to affect our lives? What do we do with all that data? Well, that's what we're going to be discussing in part right now. We have the CEO and founder of OSI Soft, Pat Kennedy, joining us. Hello. Thanks so much for being here today.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing great. Excited to talk about this. This is the kind of thing I really get into, figuring out where we're going to go with technology and what we're going to do with everything, and especially with all this data that we have, like how it's being managed. Before we get into all that, though, just to give everybody kind of the background, can you tell us about OSI Soft and what led you to found this company?
Well, certainly. I founded it nearly 40 years ago, and our job is to bring the data out of industrial facilities. So it's slightly different than the IoT, which is generally taking data off of smart equipment. But for years, these industrial facilities like the grid, refineries, etc., they have internal digital systems, and we collect data from there and then send it back out to the users for their use.
So gathering all that data and then analyzing it or sending it back maybe in a more compatible manner to these different industries. Well, there's so much to get to, and seeing where, if you've been in this for 40 years, how have you seen it change, and what is this new world like with so much data that we can get now?
Well, to put it into perspective, when we started, we had 8K drums as our only storage device. So it's just changed quite a bit. But what hasn't changed is that a lot of the data that we dig out of these systems, they're not data that people have seen before. And people, being quite adaptable, have started to make great use of it over the last 40 years.
And so doing that, being able to make use of it, how have you adapted to it, and how do you make use of all this data? And then let's get into some of the different ways that it's being collected.
So our main goal is to basically keep up with the scale that we see. I mean, original systems were smaller. And then as they get bigger and bigger, we have to make sure that the system expands. And then also we have to make sure that we can be compatible with the kind of analytics and the kind of things that people want to do with these data. And the applications are just massive.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be massive. I'm certainly going from your 8K drums to where we're at right now, with storing all of that data. So let's talk about, in particular, smart homes and what's going on there, and how much that's expanded, because we talk about it here on the show. Just so many people are getting smart home devices and then starting to add in smart home aspects to their houses, whether it's smart plugs or bulbs or whatever it is. And all that interconnection provides a lot of data. So when somebody's at home using that, where does that data go? Or I guess, how do you think that data can be used going forward?
Well, there's a lot of different data that come from the homes. Our experience has been more with the data that go to the back end. For example, the smart meter that measures the power into the homes. And then all of the control circuits. When you put solar on top of your house, or you buy batteries, they don't just automatically work. They have to work with respect to the grid. And so our software is the software that actually brings all that data back and forth to the grid and makes use of it. And we can see then also, as we put things in different facilities, there's other data out there that we'll pick up as well. And they could be things as simple as environment, like the weather, or more complex, like particle counters. And I guess we've just seen about everything.
So that's so much that's coming in, and how we manage that. I guess maybe we could talk about a couple of the different things that you've seen, now that you have all this extra data coming from the back end. Like, how do you analyze that? And maybe what are some real life applications that have happened so far?
All right. Well, first of all, you have to remember the data is unusual as a resource. Actually, the more people that consume it, the more valuable it gets. So we present the data up. And one of the applications, for example, in the industrial space, is this watching your equipment and making sure if it's about to fail, that you've taken appropriate precautions. or you can prevent it from failing, or you can schedule the downtime or something like that. That's in a complete field called asset management. And most of the industrial users have now started to do that, where they're actually looking at the equipment that constitute their facilities and making sure that it's running and running properly. There's other data, though, as well. For example, environmental. You want to make sure that if you make people go into some sort of an exposure, you can time that exposure and you know how long they've been in there. And then you can go into production. And as you watch the material go through a facility, you have to make sure it's handled properly. And that's really what I mean, is that there's this infrastructure of data. And one of the keys of infrastructure is that if you know it's there, then we're not doing our job. And there's all these applications that run on it.
So that's certainly like a real life example of somebody taking that data and being able to see something and see those changes. One thing that we've discussed here on the show before, and I see a trend in, is using data to help manage like environmental uses or streamline things that have good consequences at the same time. Maybe save money, but also save CO2. Are there any specific examples that you think that data could be used for something like that?
Oh, yes, and I think it's starting to appear right now. As we, for example, go to more renewable, we get a grid that's much harder to balance. You have to balance the production of the power with the use of the power. And power is an interesting phenomenon because it's consumed the instant it's generated. So the balance is the tricky thing. So what we've seen is a lot of the data, for example, the data coming out of the electric car charger, or the data coming off the battery management system in your home or in your business, or the data coming off the solar collectors, all have to be used and managed so that you're balancing the grid. And that's a lot cheaper and a lot more effective than trying to balance it by taking turbines and running them up and down. So in a way, I believe that we'll see when we get into the greenhouse gas mitigation that the easiest and fastest and cheapest way to do that is to do it on a data-driven decision instead of just building more equipment.
So I think that's great. Yeah, using data to decide those things. Something else that does come up when talking about all this collection of data is, security of the data and how that's managed. And I guess maybe could you speak a little bit to how that's maybe changed for you over the years, just with this long in the business, and maybe how you see that going forward?
Well, security is becoming more and more important because, in a way, the data are becoming more and more important. So what we see happening in the security world is that as we move to centralized systems like using the cloud, we'll also centralize the security operations so that there's active systems that are looking for intrusion and trying to prevent them. I think the key is that you are going to get hacked. It's not when, it's you are. You just want to know what to do about it. And so what you do when these large nonlinear events occur is all set by the data. So emergency response is one of the big applications that comes from all these data.
Emergency response, yeah, in particular, thinking about different disasters, that would probably be a very big advantage to be able to tell where things are going, what you can use that data for, and how you can manage that, I would think. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. And we have little events too. Like you might have a failure of a pump or a valve sticks open. And in the old days when you didn't have the data, it may stay stuck open for a week and you don't even notice it. But now as we have the data, we can not only see that there is action necessary, sometimes we can actually use the data to find out what that best action is.
Wow, well, it's an exciting world. I mean, just seeing where these changes are, and I'm sure you're excited to see where it goes in the next, 5 years, 10 years, where it goes from there. But certainly OSIsoft at the forefront of that. And for companies out there who want to utilize your services and your data, what's the best place for them to go?
Just go to our website and find the salespeople. We actually operate in 140 countries and produce the software in 9 languages. So wherever they are, they should be able to find our presence.
Yeah, they should be able to at that point. 140 countries and 9 languages, they should be safe. Well, I want to say thank you very much for joining us today. Really fascinating. Thanks for sharing your experience. I mean, you're a wealth of experience in this industry, and it's fun to hear where you see it going and what OSIsoft is doing with all of that data.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, so learning about how data is being managed and how it's being utilized. We keep hearing about all of this data being collected and where it's going to go. So definitely fascinating stuff. The OSI Soft right there. That was CEO and founder Pat Kennedy. All right, we did talk a little bit about Internet of Things and we did talk about smart homes. I'm going to talk about a specific smart home assistant that is out, at least if you're in Japan. I'll talk about that here in a minute and some more news. We have lots coming up on the show. We're going to have Jenny McGrath on here in a little while. She's going to be talking about actually where maybe those weather apps that you have, whether or not they're accurate. We've got that and a lot more. So stick around, drop in your comments, your questions, whatever you want to bring up, whatever you want to talk about. We are live and we do enjoy being here with you every day. So we'll be back in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Well, hello there. This is Digital Trends Live. Thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. We want to bring you up to date with some more news. I will say this, coming up on the show, we're going to be talking about security breaches and how different cities are managing that. We're going to talk about weather apps. But right now, I'm going to talk about some news, and I want to bring you up to date on some different things that are going on in the world of that. We're broadcasting live. Thanks for joining us. So drop in your comments and questions. I particularly want to know your thoughts on this next one. We all are getting more smart home assistants brought in, whether it's Google or Amazon or even Apple or whoever else is coming out with them. But this is one that's just a little bit different. And it's from a company called Gatebox. And this is a smart home assistant. Now, I will say this just to start off before everybody gets too excited. It's only going to be available in Japan. But it's a different way to interact with your smart home. One of the things that I feel like a lot of people get used to, you have your little speaker there, you interact. Sometimes it's a little bit annoying because it seems a little robotic. Well, this is the way that they're counteracting this. So this company called Gatebox, they use a platform called Clova AI. And in particular, their AI then interacts with this, with her right there. That's Azuma Hikari. That is the name of that character right there. And it is exactly as you think it is. That is an anime character. Then this guy's very excited. And that is an anime character that is the smart home assistant. So in a way, I mean, let's get beyond the fact that it's anime. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But the actual idea, the technology behind it, is kind of interesting. And their goal is to make it more human-like, make you feel more comfortable interacting with your smart home assistant. And that's why the ground AI isn't that much different from Amazon's or Google's or anybody else's AI platform. But that interacts with this. So it sends this, the data ostensibly, and then this Azuma Hikari, the character, then relays that information to you. I want to know what people think about this kind of platform, how you think about that. Now, one of the things that they particularly are modeling it for are single people and they want to model it so you have more interaction, more human-like interaction. So much so that this smart home assistant can actually text you while you're at work. And it will remind you of birthdays. It will sit down and have dinner with you. It's something they show in the video. So this is something that's a different way, and we see a lot of this happening when it comes to robotics, and a lot of that's happening with artificial intelligence, is finding out better ways that we can manage and interact with people and give it more of that human aspect. Is this too much of a human aspect? Is this, I mean, it's still an anime character, so it's not really human, but it's certainly more human than Alexa. There we go. So this guy's having a glass of champagne with his Azuma Hikari. Oh, she's drinking too. So again, in a way, I mean, just to be completely honest, I'm like, okay, that seems kind of sad. But in a way, the guy's at home alone, you know, and he's got Azuma there to share a glass with. This seems like something. I mean, we've seen so many different movies associated with this, like She or different ones where people become involved with their AI friends. And we're going to start seeing this more and more. The more artificial intelligence develops, the more we're going to see this. So this one in particular, again, this is Gatebox. I'm seeing some of the comments of Vicky, just no. So Vicky, not a fan of Hikari, Azuma Hikari. So this one in particular is going to be only available in Japan to start off with because it only speaks Japanese. I'm sure they'll work to adapt it towards adapting it. It's very expensive. It's $1,390 plus a $14 a month subscription for Hikari. And like I said, it only speaks Japanese currently, but that is certainly an advancement in the world of smart home assistants. Is that something you would want here if you're, say, in the United States? Do you want your Alexa to have a shape and a form and to be able to talk to you and live in a little glass box and a little anime character? Do you want that? Is that something you would look forward to? Does that make it more pleasant to interact with your smart home assistant, or is this just a little bit too far? Let us know what you think. We're broadcasting live. I want to see your comments. Again, Vicky, just no. All right. Continuing on. Let's talk a little bit more news here, a little more things to bring you up to date with. And we do have an interview coming up here shortly where we'll be talking about security breaches and different aspects of that, especially when it comes to cities. And that's been happening a lot lately. If you're in Baltimore, you know about that. Here we go. So autonomous vehicles. Obviously, this is something that we bring up a lot. There's so many different companies working on it. We all know this at this point. And everybody wants to bring their autonomous vehicle to the road, and also in the trucking industry. The trucking industry certainly working towards that. We've seen a lot of tests. Even the U.S. Postal Service was running a test going from, I believe, Phoenix to Dallas to different mail centers, testing out autonomous vehicles with somebody in there in the truck to make sure that it's safe. But the idea is that it can save time, they can team them up, it's more efficient, it's more environmentally friendly when they can control it all through the autonomous side of it. There's another company that's testing this out, in particular in Florida. Florida's become kind of a hotbed also with autonomous vehicles. They just recently passed a law allowing more autonomous testing to go on their roads. So if you're in Florida, there's a more likely chance that you could see a driverless vehicle. And this is one that is a driverless truck. So it comes from Starsky Robotics, which is a San Francisco-based company. And they recently had a test, and we've got the video here showcasing it, where their robot truck was going 55 miles an hour down a public road with nobody behind the wheel. And there's part of the video of it. And, you know, certainly there's all kinds of advantages with autonomous vehicles. And like I said, you know, the environmental side of it, the efficiency side of it. And in theory, I'm 100% behind that. But there is something about actually seeing the video of a giant semi-truck with no one behind the wheel going down the road. It does put it a little bit more in perspective, to where you're like, okay, that's actually real. That's a little bit unnerving seeing it at first. And I feel like there's going to be it's going to take a lot for us to get used to this aspect and seeing this on the road, because it's going to happen. So we're going to have to get used to it. This is the way the industry is going. But Starsky in particular has something that's a little bit different in how they're managing it. So they do have the autonomous side, to where it's going down the road completely autonomous, but they also have somebody back at a center who can remote control it. And so their idea is that until the autonomy is really fully up to speed, it's fine going down the highway, having the truck control itself. But they went for tight turns, for going into cities, they have somebody who sits in a booth with a remote control and actually remotely controls that truck. Different kind of aspect to it. So they've got like 3 computer screens set up, and they sit there and they can just remote control this thing wherever they go, like it's a video game. How do you feel about that aspect of it? For me personally, when I'm thinking about that, this is something where we've had to think about a lot. We knew this is going to be coming. We know that autonomous vehicles are going to be out there, but seeing it actually in action, okay, a little bit. But I think I like it more if it's just the truck driving it than I do if somebody remotely controlling it. For me personally, I think it's something that's we're going to have to get over. But the savings are huge. I mean, you have somebody who's sitting there that just takes over occasionally. Money-wise, it's going to help out everything. But that is something that's interesting. I'm seeing Keelan, honestly, it'll be safe when humans are removed from the equation. They are the problems on the road, not the autonomous vehicles. And yeah, I think that's largely true. I think it really is going to be safer. But that's certainly something that we've seen happen. And so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes and how that all works out. But again, that's Starsky with their autonomous truck. So if you're in Florida, you may be seeing that. It's either driving itself or somebody's remotely controlling it. Something to think about when it comes to autonomous vehicles. All right. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Digital Trends Live. And again, thank you everybody for tuning in today. However you find us, always so much fun having discussions with you and talking about technology and talking about data and talking about all kinds of aspects that affect our lives, but certainly something we're all well aware of are security breaches and security issues associated with our accounts and also with cities. If you're in the city of Baltimore in particular, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where data was hacked into and certainly a lot of issues that went on with that. And there's something that to be said and to talk about when it comes to cybersecurity solutions and how we handle that. And right now, we're going to be talking to somebody who is certainly an expert in that. We have Gus Evangelikos. Hello, Gus. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Greg. Pleasure to be here.
Gus, thank you. And I want to talk about this and really get into some of these details because it's a fascinating world and also a little bit scary. And so it's interesting to see how different solutions are being come across. But let's get a little bit of background about yourself and, of course, for Comodo as well, about how you fit into this industry.
Absolutely. I'm the director of field engineering here at Comodo. So we work with customers on a daily basis, helping them solve the cybersecurity challenges that they have. Specifically for ransomware, Comodo does have great technology to help prevent against such attacks and making sure that files and other system services are not affected by it. Comodo has a holistic cybersecurity platform, so it's not just for the endpoint security, but also for email, and web browsing and stuff like that.
And cybersecurity is something that I feel like most people are aware of. There's issues with hacking and ransomware, but I don't know if everybody's aware of how prevalent it really is. And could you just give us, for everybody watching, a little bit of an example of some of the different ones? I know Baltimore had it, and there was even some other ones that just this week, I believe, like city infrastructures.
Correct. So there's multiple cities. I mean, attackers are basically, scanning the internet for vulnerabilities all the time. There's phishing attacks and campaigns that are continuously, targeting different organizations and, public sectors. And if they do get a catch where someone does open one of the emails that does contain maliciousness, it doesn't mean that, a ransomware attack will happen immediately. A lot of times they might stay silent for a while because they do have access to the network, trying to identify vulnerabilities that they can then go ahead and target, right? Most of these companies and the public sector, data is really important, but furthermore, for cities of Baltimore, Lake City and places where there's critical infrastructure where the public depends on these services, it could have a lasting effect and immediate, problems for entire cities where if you don't have the protection, to handle these things, an attacker doesn't necessarily need to impact the organization right away. They could stay silent until they find something, and then at that point they can trigger, lightning speed, the ransomware attacks or stealing data, et cetera.
Wow. I mean, it's a lot that everybody needs to be up to speed on, and being able to be ahead of hackers would be, it's a tremendous task, because like you said, they're out there all the time right now trying to figure out how to get into everything. And for a company like yours, how do you stay ahead of that? How do you stay on top of that and be one step ahead of them?
So the one thing that we always want to make sure is educate customers on just basic security, right? One of the main things is to make sure that you're patching your systems in cases such as, Baltimore. in Lake City, the critical part there is having backups, right? Doing your basic, you know, your basic functionality to ensure that in case things like this can happen, you can recover very easily. And so at Komodo, you know, we make sure that, you know, customers are aware of how to patch their systems, you know, making sure vulnerabilities are not there, having the backups, but also you want to ensure that you have the latest capabilities in protecting against such threats. And here at Komodo, the one thing that, you know, we believe in is that you can't always detect these threats, and, you know, hackers find ways around current mitigations and other protections. And so you need to really find a way to focus more on protection of the unknown rather than trying to detect all the time. Because again, detection is going to continuously fail us. Yes, they can potentially catch what they know, but how do you really protect against something that you don't? And the only way to do that is to use a technology that can contain it as opposed to trying to detect it.
So going forward, how much do you think this is going to be an issue for ordinary consumers versus businesses, and how much should they be prepping for ahead of time?
So, I mean, for hackers and attackers, right, what we're seeing, the payouts at $500,000 and $400,000, it's more lucrative to attack corporations and public sectors. And as long as, you know, we keep paying them, they just have, you know, more reason to keep doing what they're doing, especially for the public sector. Obviously, when cities are affected, it will have, you know, news coverage. And so, you know, the attackers they have more momentum to keep going and continue to try to attack, you know, anything that they find. And it's not necessarily that they're targeting the public sector, but when someone does, you know, find a way in, they know that, you know, it's going to get a lot of publicity. You know, people's lives could be in danger, especially when you're affecting, you know, 911 systems and critical infrastructure. Right. And so, you know, you really need to just keep aware of it, do your, you know, your basic due diligence. But, you know, oftentimes, unfortunately, there's not much you can do aside from just making sure you have everything in place that could mitigate that threat.
And maybe don't click on the random links that are sent to you.
Absolutely. The one, yeah, never open up macros. I mean, the one hard part is, you know, that sometimes these spoofing emails are so convincing that they might seem like they'd be coming from a coworker. But again, if you don't trust it, if you don't really get those requests via email, don't just double click and open things, right?
Yeah.
Second guess it.
Yeah. Are there any other tips and tricks just for people who may not be thinking, you know, that there's somebody who would be vulnerable to this, but clearly that, you know, the masking emails are definitely an issue. But what other kinds of tips and tricks could we have for people?
I mean, the main thing is just making sure that, again, you have backups in place, and you have a way to react to things, right? A lot of times when these attacks happen, there's places, companies and, you know, again, public sector, where they don't have an incident response playbook. It's critical to understand, you know, everyone's role and what they can do to react to such a case when it does happen, and that will help bring everything back up. As far as, you know, technology, it's critical to invest in, you know, things that can already detect the known things, because if you already know something is bad, why not just have the protections that can help you do that, including when you click on links or web browsing, you know, with DNS protection and stuff like that. And ultimately, if you have a defense in depth strategy where you're protecting your emails, your web browsing, your endpoints, and making sure that all your systems are always patched and up to date, the attackers have a less, basically a reduced footprint of where they can carry out their attacks.
Do you think this is something that small businesses should be concerned with as well, being on the same page, or is it more of a bigger businesses, because you mentioned, you know, the bigger payout?
Well, the smaller businesses are extremely vulnerable. Oftentimes, the larger corporations do have, you know, the money to invest in security operations centers, having teams that can do that, and investing in the most, you know, up-to-date or best-in-breed technology. But oftentimes, small businesses don't have the same resources, and so they are very vulnerable, you know, to ransomware, because again, they can basically shut down a business, right? Just like we saw with LabCorp and Quest Diagnostics, where that third-party vendor basically became bankrupt. So absolutely, I mean, small businesses are a big target.
Well, Gus, thank you so much for joining us here too to talk about this. It's something I think everybody needs to be aware of, and you need to be concerned about it. And like you said, just be ready, be prepared ahead of time to try to fend this off, because they're going to be attacking you regardless, whether you're ready or not. For anybody who wants to use Komodo's products, what's the best place for them to go?
If you visit Komodo.com, they can go and see the product portfolio, and we can always have a demo. There's also a YouTube channel called Komodo Cybersecurity where we have different demonstrations of the product. But again, we always want to have a conversation with the customer and making sure that they don't just invest in a tool. They have a bigger strategy than just buying another product.
Great. Well, Gus, thank you so much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Greg.
All right, so learning about cybersecurity, again, something like Gus was saying, very, very important to be prepared, be ready, no matter what's going on. So here's what's going to happen next. We have another interview for you. So Jenny McGrath is going to be joining us to talk about weather apps. We all use the weather apps. I use mine at least a lot. Why is it not always accurate? What's going on with that? We're going to discuss that in some more detail. Drop in your comments and questions. We are live. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. And thanks for your comments. Jarvis gave us a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That was on Facebook, wherever you're on, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn Live, Twitch, whatever platform. Thanks for joining us. Digitaltrends.com/live as well. We're going to take a break. We'll be back here in a minute with more DT Live. And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. I know I say thank you a lot, but I really mean that. Thanks a lot for joining us. So whatever platform you're on, we appreciate that, and we will respond, and we'll talk to you. And it's fun here every day having these conversations about tech. I'm Greg Nibbler, so let's talk about something that we probably all use in some aspect. If you look down at your phone right now, you probably have a weather app of some kind, and you've probably noticed that sometimes it's not accurate, or maybe you just want to know how that works. Well, we've got an article up about that, and we have the author joining us right now. It is Jenny McGrath. Hello, Jenny.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us. This is so funny because yesterday I'm here in Portland, and there was a big storm that happened, and I'm like, I don't remember getting any notification of a big thunderstorm that came through, let alone much information on my app. So it was a little frustrating. So it's why it's perfect timing for me that we're talking about this today. But can we get just a little background on why you wrote this?
Yeah, so the National Weather Service, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, it's who normally sends out those weather alerts. They updated their modeling system, which basically creates all of the forecasts that we're familiar with that get sent out to a lot of our local news and places like that. And they updated their model for the first time in 40 years. And they said it would be more accurate. So I was wondering, what does that mean, and where does all the information come from? So that's why I decided to look into it.
So where does that come from? Is it all coming from one source, just the National Weather Service? Because we have the different apps, AccuWeather, Weather Underground, or whoever else you're using. Where does all that information come from then?
So most of these bigger companies are using a bunch of models. So the National Weather Service is just one of them. There are models from Europe. The European model is kind of considered the gold standard and the most accurate. There's one from the UK. The UK Met Office has their own, and Japan, China, all these different countries have their own models. So what a lot of bigger weather companies will do is take all of these models and sort of run them through their algorithms, through their processing systems, and use that as sort of the baseline. And then some companies have meteorologists that will sort of look at these final forecasts and say, oh, we know this model tends to run too cold, let's adjust it a little bit.
So there is still a human element in there too, in some capacity.
In some cases. So, if you've ever used the app Dark Sky, they're sort of proud of the fact that they don't have any meteorologists. They sort of just rely solely on mixing all of these models together and taking it. And, it's kind of like guessing jelly beans in a jar. If you, take 25 guesses, it'll be more accurate than just your single guess by yourself.
So, I mean, looking at it for the different aspects of what we rely on for the weather tracking information, like what are some of the different key aspects of that?
So, if you're going to look at, say, your Apple app, you'll notice it will say, it's 85 degrees and it will have a picture of a sun, right? Like that's not maybe going to give you as much information as if you go into a more detailed weather app that will then say, hour by hour chance of precipitation, and just give you a little bit more of these sort of textual analyses. And so it depends on how important the weather is for you that day. If you're just sort of glancing at it and you want to know, should I bring my umbrella or not, that might be okay. But if a bigger storm is coming and you're not completely sure what 50% chance of rain means, the sort of probability of it all, you might want to look for more of that kind of textual analysis that's going to give you a better idea of what exactly the probability of you getting rained on is.
Like taking a more comprehensive approach to your weather apps. In particular, in the article, you talk about using Portland, Oregon as an example of what goes into predicting the weather in Portland. Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. So, you mentioned that there was a thunderstorm yesterday in Portland. That's actually pretty rare, right? Like here
Very
in the
rare.
Northwest, once it sort of hits, around this time of year, our days are just going to be kind of warm and sunny, and there's not going to be that much variation. But if you go to, say, the Midwest, it's sort of a standard joke. Oh, if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes and it will change, because it is so unpredictable. It has these sort of air masses that are very unpredictable. So when they rise, they can then, lead to these thunderstorms that can pop up very quickly, and they're much harder to predict. So, your weather app might work really well in certain areas of the country in certain times of year, but it might not be quite as accurate if you're gonna, go travel somewhere that you're not familiar with. Like, for example, I was looking at Memphis this morning because they're having some thunderstorms, and my Apple app said, chance of thunderstorm 50% or whatever it was. But I looked at a local weather app and it said flood watch, which is a very different, sort of,
yeah,
especially if you're not familiar with the area, you might want to, look a little bit more closely at that if you're not familiar with the areas where you're going to be traveling.
Yeah, that's a big difference between those two. Well, I think it's really, really interesting, how we're getting that data, and just to remember that it's not always accurate. Because I think I'm speaking from personal experience. Like, I'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, no, it's not going to rain, and then lo and behold, it rains. Because I'm not really looking at a lot of different places, and it's important to remember that not all of our tech is 100% accurate on everything, as we've learned. Can I ask just personally, what weather app do you use? Like, when you're going through this, is there any one particular one that you've found that you like more?
So I think, there's a site called Forecast Watch, and it has another offshoot called Forecast Advisor that goes through and tells you the percentages that each one is correct. And they found that, the Weather Channel is often the most correct, but that's still, I think, about 78% of the time. And I looked at it for here in Seattle, and it is about 78% of the time. I looked at it for Michigan, where I'm from, and it's more like 68% of the time. So it might just really depend on where you live, based on whether or not it's actually going to be accurate for you. So I would say look at Forecast Advisor, it'll let you type in your zip code, and it will give you sort of the breakdown of some of the bigger ones that
what their predictions are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it's a really interesting article. I think everybody should definitely go read it, because if you use a weather app, and we all do, it's fun to know how that actually happens. And thanks, for taking some time to come in here and talk about it too, of course. And everybody can read the article there at Digital Trends. And Jenny, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
All right, so that's fascinating. I am going to dig into that article here in a little bit, because I want to know where my weather information comes from. And you can read that at digitaltrends.com. And that's what we do here. We take stuff and we try to analyze and break it down and make it something that everybody can understand, including myself and everybody watching. So thanks for watching. Let's recap a little bit about what we've covered today, because it has, as usual, it's been a lot. I know I say a lot. But I'm saying it was a lot. So going back to the beginning of the show, we had Nicole Rainey in here joining us, talking about some of the news stories at the top of the show. Amazon with their new counter service. So if you're near a Rite Aid, that might be something that you could be going to pick up some of your packages. Nicole, and we covered several different things that you can watch at digitaltrends.com. You can follow up on those stories. We also had Miguel Quiroga, CEO of Visible. Visible getting a lot of play today. Visible is certainly in the news, talking about their phone service, an all digital, all app-based phone service. Let us know what you think about that. I think it's kind of an interesting prospect, and if it works, that's pretty cool. Felicia Miranda from New York, our New York studio, our video game editor, talking about Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, which you can still get into tomorrow if you pre-buy it. So check out all of our reviews. We've got Pat Kennedy from OSIsoft, founder and CEO. He's been in the business for 40 years analyzing data. That's a wealth of information. We kind of dug into a little bit of what he had and talking about the future of data management. Gus Evangelikos from Komodo with some of those cybersecurity breaches. We've read about what's going on in Baltimore and Lake City and different areas of like that, where cities are getting their data held hostage for ransomware. He talked about how some of the ways that cities can help prevent that and be prepared. Good information for all of us. And all of that's just stuff that we've covered today here on Digital Trends. We've got another show coming up tomorrow, though, and that is Between the Streams. We'll have that segment. Well, Between the Streams will be part of DT Live. That's one segment for tomorrow's show. So Between the Streams, where Ryan Juanita will join myself to bring you up to date on movies and entertainment, and we'll have tons of interviews, coverage, lots to talk about tomorrow, just like we do every day here at Digital Trends, live every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you these tech headlines, news, interviews, discussions, and read them and weep and all kinds of different things. So we appreciate everybody that joins us. It's so much fun talking to you. One programming note, normally today, Thursday, would be Trends with Benefits, live at 2:30 p.m. Pacific. We actually went live yesterday due to some scheduling issues, but the podcast will be up for you to watch or to listen to. So we'll have that podcast up. Hit subscribe wherever you get podcasts to Trends with Benefits. Make sure you get that downloaded today. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with more Digital Trends Live.